Our presenter is Michele Cole. She is the Able Ministry representative for the state of Georgia, where she lives with her husband and two boys. They attend the Pentecostals of Waycross, where her husband is the senior pastor. And this is what I love most about her. She's happiest when she's teaching, leading worship, and helping churches support able families in their congregations. So we're excited to hear what she has to say tonight.
Well, I am so honored to be here with you all tonight. Part 1, making sensory-friendly lessons. There we go. So what does it mean to be sensory-friendly? So when we're talking about sensory-friendly, we're talking about appealing to our 5 main senses. How do you learn best? Do you need to see it? Do you need to do it? Do you need to touch it? Children are going to learn this same way. So here are 3 things, 3 practical things that you can do right away to help you be sensory friendly in your classroom. You can use visuals. This is a visual schedule. You can start off with a visual schedule. This is going to help those students that need to know what happens next, those ones that have trouble with transitions. A visual schedule is a great thing. You can use pictures with your stories to help illustrate the concept. This is especially helpful for those with comprehension issues or for our younger ones who don't understand abstract concepts like faith and love. Seeing a picture helps to make it a little bit more concrete. Also, when we show a picture, it helps to visually engage our learners. And when they're visually engaged, they are less of a likelihood to be a behavior distraction. You can allow for movement. One great way that I used to love to do when I was teaching in the classroom was to have my students act out part of the story. Put actions to your Bible verses. Make your transitions movement friendly. So let's say you're going from the play area to the learning area, and you tell the boys and girls, okay, children, we're going to move to the learning area, and everybody sit down, float like a butterfly. Be creative. Don't feel like you just have to herd a bunch of crazy cats, okay? Make it hands-on. Hands-on is important for all tactile learners. So maybe you're talking about Noah's Ark. Build Noah's Ark out of Legos or blocks. If you're talking about Moses parting the Red Sea, maybe have a Red Sea of blankets that they have to walk through. Be creative with how you allow for movement, and don't feel like movement needs to be restricted to a special time. Here are some sensory considerations that you might want to have in your classroom. We don't always think about these things, but for children that are affected by their senses greatly, being able to lessen the irritation of some of these things can really make a huge difference. So the first one we want to talk about is our lighting. Consider having light covers that cover over harsh fluorescent lighting. Maybe wear sunglasses and be super cool. If you're using strobe lights, I know some churches use strobe lights for like special things. Consider giving people a warning or letting them know somehow that there's going to be strobe lights in the sanctuary, because for students that have a seizure disorder or chronic migraine sufferers, or even adults that suffer from PTSD, think of your military, a lighting situation with strobe lights can be very triggering for them. Next thing we want to consider is our scents. What does it smell like? You want to think soft and calming. Don't overpower the room with your perfume and then your lotion, and then you have a scented plug-in, and then a candle, and then your aromatherapy diffuser. That's just a little bit too much. So try to keep your scents as neutral and light as possible. This is especially important for kids that have severe allergies. Visuals. I know when I was growing up and I was a young teacher in Sunday school, the more ostentatious and grandiose the classroom decorations were, the better it was. That's not necessarily the case these days. You want to have some white space in your classroom for children to rest their eyes. For a child with sensory issues, less is more. You want to make your visuals make sense in your room and not just add fluff. For seating, you want to have a variety of ways that a child can be seated. Have a desk, a beanbag, a carpet square. Does Johnny have to sit in the seat in order to pay attention to your lesson? For a kid with sensory issues, maybe ADHD or even autism, they don't necessarily need to be sitting down to be listening and paying attention to you. As long as they're not distracting from other students, just give them a special spot to be in. Another thing to consider is our noise level. And this is so key in our apostolic churches. We like it loud, loud, loud. So allow for some noise canceling headphones or even some little earplugs. If children if you're going to use alarms or timers in your classroom, maybe give the students a preview of what that alarm or that sound is going to be so that they're not startled, because sometimes just the startling sound of that new noise can contribute to a meltdown, and we definitely don't want that. The last thing to consider is temperature. Some children are very, very sensitive to temperature. Some adults are too. I know I have a bin in my sanctuary full of blankets that people leave all over the sanctuary because it's too cold for them. So maybe you want to have a bin with cozy blankets in your class, have a little fan. Um, for Mother's Day, I gave hand fans because, well, we're in South Georgia and it's always hot and we have a metal building. So say no more about the heat. The next part is help for overstimulated students. So, what does this look like? I want you to take a second and think about a time or a place where maybe you felt overstimulated. What does this look like to you? What does that feel like to you? If you're a mom with young kids, feel overstimulated by the end of the day most every day. I know I did when my kids were little. Um, One time that I felt especially overstimulated was a trip to Disney World, to the Magic Kingdom. It's magical, it's wonderful, but everything is so wild and so over the top. I also feel overstimulated when I go to Buc-ee's, but I think that's my own problem. So, for kids that are overstimulated in their senses, sometimes that overstimulation is going to manifest itself as a behavioral issue. And the reason why is because they don't really have the vocabulary to state what they're feeling. Some of them, the majority of them, really can't even identify what it is that's causing the problem. They just know they need to get out of your room right now. So, these are some behaviors that you might see in your classroom. The first one is a refusal to comply or using negative talk. They might say phrases like, that's dumb, or I don't want to, or just flat out say no. We need to make sure that we're not looking at their refusal to comply or their negative talk as outright disrespect. They're not trying to be disrespectful to you, I promise. They're just trying to use their own way of saying, I would really rather continue doing what I'm doing right now. So these phrases might be negative talk to you, but don't engage with that. Don't let it create a power struggle between you and that student. Refer to your visual schedule. Okay, well, right now it's playtime, but playtime is over. Did you hear the alarm? Playtime is over. We're going to transition to our lesson now. And then after our lesson, we have snack time. I have goldfish and juice for snack today. Don't you want some goldfish and some juice? They're more likely to comply if you remind them of something exciting that's coming up next. So you can also help to ease the transition with a timer and a verbal warning. Ladies and gentlemen, class, boys and girls, little saints, whatever you want to call them, we have 2 minutes left until we move on to our next activity. Another thing that you might see is they might wander off or stay off to the sides. And that's because sometimes children have a difficult time organically forming friendships. So, one thing you could do is to pair them with a buddy who's going to help keep them engaged and interactive. But the one thing that we want to remember is that inclusion is not just having them in the room. Inclusion is making a space for them to interact as well. If Sally is paired with Susie, but Susie never talks to Sally, that's not inclusion. That's just her being in the room. But when you remind Sally to talk to Susie, and Sally and Susie begin to talk to one another, then they can start to form friendships. The next thing that happens is sometimes they might get physically aggressive or start throwing objects. The key to remember here is that behavior is communication. And so when they become physically aggressive, this is their nonverbal way of saying, I've had enough. And it's a very clear sign of a child that's overstimulated. Provide a calm down corner for them. In one of our Sunday school classrooms, we have a calm down corner with a little lava lamp and some soft fuzzy fidgets, some soft toys that they can sit there and calm down with. Let them take a walk down the hallway with a buddy, even if that buddy is just another stuffed animal. If the child becomes overly disruptive, you want to remove the other students from the classroom and then go get a parent. The last situation is a meltdown or uncontrollable crying. This is another sure sign of a completely overstimulated child. You want to provide a reduction of stimulus for them. Maybe it's through some headphones or some sunglasses. Smell something comforting like lavender or vanilla, and then provide a buddy for them to take a walk with. Part 3. I hope I'm not going too fast. Part 3 is supporting our families. The goal of ABLE Ministry is to provide systems of support for those with special needs in our congregation. It's going to look different in every church and in every department, but the end result is for families with special needs to feel accepted, have a sense of belonging, and know that they're loved and feel that encouragement from our churches and our church families. So, how can we support special needs families? Over 80% of families with a special need do not attend church, and most don't because they feel that they're going to be judged or shunned in our congregations. So, here are 3 ways that you can make sure that children and youth with special needs are cared for in your congregation. You want to be proactive, reach out, don't just sit and watch, ask questions, collaborate, and communicate often. Ask them, how are we doing? What else can we do to help you? But be genuine. A little love goes a really long way. One other thing that we want to talk about that I did not include on this slide is our spiritual IEP. And this is the best way to establish support. So, when we create that spiritual IEP, we're going to use that as a document to help springboard our communication and collaboration with our families. So, let's review what we talked about today. We're going to create sensory friendly lessons through hands on lessons that use visuals and allow for movement. We're going to be aware of the senses that are engaged in our classroom environment. Sight, sound, taste, touch, feel, they all matter. We can notice when a child is overstimulated and be proactive about creating ways to reduce the stimuli. We can have noise canceling headphones or some sunglasses. Ask a trusted student or another adult to be a buddy. But most importantly, be proactive in your classroom and always show God's love. So let's connect. You can connect to us at Able Ministries through these channels and also on our Facebook page.
I do want to talk to you about Able Ministry. My computer's over here, which is why I keep looking this way. All right. ABLE stands for Accept, Believe, Love, and Embrace Individuals and Families Affected by Disability. And it all began when Denise Wynn wrote this book about her life and the life of her child who had autism and epilepsy. And at that time, the ladies' president read that book and said, oh no, we have to do something about this. And Able Ministry was born out of that burden. Fast forward 10 years, today we are in 37 districts across the US and Canada, as well as in Mexico and Europe and soon to be Australia. So it's a very exciting time. If you have an ABLE rep in your district, I encourage you to connect with them. They are the on-the-ground contact for supporting people with disabilities in your district. If your district isn't lit up blue, contact your district's ladies president because she is the one who appoints the ABLE rep. If you're saying, well, I would love to be an ABLE rep, we would love to have you be an ABLE rep. Again, talk to your ladies president about that. If your district does have an ABLE rep, something that they might do is set up a sensory room at camp or at district convention, and that's an example of one. The other thing that they might do is coordinate sensory headphones. So if you don't know what sensory headphones are, the audio of the service is into the headphones. It kind of muffles the outside noise, and it gives you the ability to control the volume. And we have seen kids get the Holy Ghost at camp with these headphones on. So they really do work. Your ABLE rep can also do training. If your church or Sunday school department needs training. If your state does not have a rep and you need training, reach out to us because we have reps who do video training or can travel. This is a brand new book which talks about how to start a disability ministry in your church. Like I like to say, it is soup to nuts. It is absolutely everything that you could possibly want to know about doing that. And last but not least, as Michele said, please connect with us. I think about our Facebook group is kind of the hub of ABLE. There you will hear praise reports and you can ask questions. You'll find therapists and teachers, pastors and inclusion coordinators, people with disabilities, a very active Facebook group. We also have a resource for moms, and that is our virtual moms group. We have, how many? 3 right now? We offer Spanish and English. It's all based on that book, that workbook, which goes along with Denise's book. It's an 11-week call. It starts in the spring and in the fall. So highly recommend that one. We do sensory stuff at the district level, but also at the national level. So if you are going to NAYC or General Conference, headphones will be available there. ABLE has lots of resources for children's ministry, whether that is our spiritual IEP, which is this document right here. It's a 15-question form for Sunday school teachers to have conversations with parents to figure out what exactly that kid needs. If you use God's Word for Life curriculum, it has a supplement that goes through every activity in the book and gives you accommodations for kids with disabilities. So that is there. It's in the, as I said, the resources kit, the downloadable section of the curriculum. And then we have about 10 of these in the background here. They were created so that if you don't know anything about Down syndrome or autism or whatever, and a kid walks in with that, they are just quick, handy sheets. You grab it, and it's got one section that talks about where to start. So most kids with autism or most kids with Down syndrome, this is what they're going to need. Just real quick, so you could just get like immediate assistance. And then on the back, it provides additional information. If you really want to do a deep dive, it gives you the sites and information on that. All of those, God's Words for Life is available in God's Word for Life curriculum, but the other two are available on our Facebook group if you're looking for those. And finally, we have a podcast. We have a YouTube channel. We're on Instagram. On our YouTube channel, we have trainings on autism and intellectual disability and behavior and how to pray for kids that don't want to go up front. And all of these webinars from the last month will be out there as well. So connect with us. And finally, if you're interested in partnering with us financially, you can make a one-time donation or monthly donation. Okay, so what do we have for questions? I'm going to get out of here so we can all go back and see each other. And Michele, I'm going to let you handle most of them.
Okay.
I've got one over here direct to me, so I can ask that in a minute. So go ahead.
Okay, so the one question that's for everybody is, what would be your recommendation on how to create a sensory or safe calming space in a shared room that we remove and recreate? That's a challenge. That's a challenge. In those cases, I would recommend something that's portable, like a busy bag. That's we at our church, we use busy bags that are literally just pencil pouches from the Dollar Tree, the clear pencil pouch. And we have fidgets and some magnetic tiles, different tactile things in there. I have little backpacks with some coloring stuff if they'd rather do that. Some blank paper and pencil if they just want to doodle. So it's really making it something that's quick and portable. Another option that I've seen is they had somebody took those flexible cutting boards and they hot glued different textured items to those cutting boards and they just pinned them on the wall. You can use suction cups so that it doesn't, make a hole in the person's wall if you don't want to do that. So that's an option. I hope that answers your question a little bit. But definitely get creative. Make some sensory bottles. Those are quick and portable. And then with that sensory bottle, you can have like maybe a list of questions like how many animals do you see in the bottle? What colors do you see? Something along those lines, just to help keep them engaged. The other question was a direct to me question, but I did answer direct to them, but I do want to share it for the good of the org because it is an important question. The question is, I heard you say that if a student is getting physically aggressive, you suggest moving all the other students from the room and then getting the parent of the aggressive student. Is that true? That seems more disruptive to the class overall. Could you please talk a little more about that? So I know that that feels counterintuitive to move everybody else, but it really is the safest way, especially for you. From a church liability standpoint, you don't want to put your hands on a child, especially when they are emotionally dysregulated. Their adrenaline is in overdrive, their cortisol is in overdrive, and they literally, no joke, no exaggeration, can become like the Hulk. It's real. It can be. I've seen teachers, not Sunday school teachers, but when I worked in public school, I've seen teachers like literally walk away with black eyes from trying to stop a child that's emotionally dysregulated. So it's safer for you from a church perspective, a liability issue, to quickly and quietly remove all the other children out of the room and then have an usher or another teacher go get the parent so that the parent is the one to deal with them and calm them down.
You mentioned about buddies. And
Yeah.
so how young or how old does a child have to be a buddy, and how do you do that?
If it's in a classroom, like a peer-to-peer buddy, That's totally up to you. Just pick a student that you think would work well with this child. If your church has a protocol or a procedure in place for choosing like an official buddy buddy system kind of thing, then that's something that you want to talk about with your pastor or your Sunday school leadership. Every church is different. I'll give you an example. I started teaching Sunday school when I was 12 years old. I grew up in a home missions church. My pastor said, well, you're 12, you're old enough to babysit, you're old enough to watch the 2-year-olds for Sunday school for about 30 minutes. And my assistant was 10. So, depending on your church, you're just going to use what you have available. I know it sounds bad, but let's be honest, that's just how we roll these days, right? You just use what you've got. So, in a Sunday school classroom, let's say you have a 5-year-old that comes in, and the parent, gives you the IEP and they tell you, they're autistic, whatever. But you've got another child that's maybe 7 and is just really sweet and patient and just really welcoming with everybody, not in an annoying way. You know what I mean? Those kids. um but so maybe that can be that 5-year-old's buddy, just to help make them feel welcome. Every class has got to have that one kid that's a connector, right? So identify who your connector is and just help them naturally use that gifting that God gave them to make them connect starting at a young age.
I love it. All right. I don't see any other questions. Deanna did comment that for that room that moves every week, you might want to get a tote with wheels on it that you could
Yes,
toss everything
that's a
in,
great idea.
or a beanbag chair. Yep.
That's a great idea. My suitcase, I have a suitcase that's just for able stuff. And so when I go to conferences, when I go to teach a class at another church, I wheel my suitcase because sometimes I'm not going to have somebody there to help me bring in 2 or 3 totes. So, just get you an expensive suitcase on wheels. One church that I know of, they use a toolbox. It's like a large plastic toolbox that you would have in your garage, and they've converted that to be their able toolkit, and they wheel it out into the lobby, and it works great for them.
I love it. I love how everybody. So this feels like the Able Facebook group. So you can just ask whatever if you're like, I don't know what to do. And within 30 minutes, 45 minutes,
Yeah.
a bunch of people are like, oh, we do this, we do that. So anyway.
I love it.
All right. Well, we are right at time, a little bit over. Not too bad, though. Thank you so much for joining. Michele, do you have anything in closing?
I don't. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. I hope I taught you something that was useful.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.
All right. God bless. Good night.